Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. What's your opinion on the inverse hamstring curl machine that Louie Simmons owns? Is it better than the Glute Ham Raise? That's an interesting question. I've only seen this device actually used ever on camera once. It looks like a great device. I'm sure it is phenomenal. Is it better than a glute ham raise? I don't know that it is. It might be, but what you have to look at with the glute ham raise brings a lot to the table. Now, the downside to the glute ham raise is, of course, that if someone is starting out very, very weak, they're not going to be able to do glute ham raises. You're going to have to put it on such a easy setting that it doesn't work that well on the glute ham raise for someone who is maybe starting out much, much weaker. And that's the biggest problem we have with it. Because if you think about all the movements of the hamstring and all the functions of it, the glute ham raise works every function of the hamstring effectively. And for people who are like, yeah, but the strength curve isn't perfect because it's mostly at a certain point in the joint angle, and as you come up, even though you're coming up, it's less tension on the hamstring. Well, that can be fixed with sets of bands, right? Because band resistance is commonly used on the glute ham raise to completely change the strength curve, right? It makes it a very, very versatile piece of equipment, particularly if you use the stuff that most powerlifters and stuff use. We have things like bands and chains and stuff to change strength curves on all of our barbell lifts. Well, we can do the same thing with a glute ham raise device, right? We can do the exact same thing if we need to change that strength curve. Again, the only downside is you have to be very strong, at least relative to your body weight, right? Most of my experience with a glute ham raise is being 200 plus pounds. Maybe someone who's much lighter, it would be different. But you have to be very strong to utilize it. You have to be very, very strong to utilize it with bands, right? Average starting lifter is not going to be able to do that, but we could also argue the average starting lifter may not need all this hamstring specialization yet. Wouldn't hurt them though. So you have something like Louie's device, which is probably going to be a bit more adjustable. But the question becomes, for his gym in particular, he doesn't have weak people training there. So again, context, I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily better. It's an interesting piece of equipment. I'm sure most of us would love to have one, just for the versatility for dealing with things like the posterior chain. But better becomes a relative term, guys. Either we're fully working a muscle or a specific strength curve, or we are not, right? All right, next question. Thoughts on decline floor press? I've started using this exercise at home because I have bars and plates but no bench, so relying on floor press only and variations of it whilst gyms are closed. I'll be honest with you, brother. I've never heard of this before. I don't even know how you would do a decline floor press. So you've invented an exercise. I mean, I could try to imagine what you're doing, but you didn't provide video, you didn't provide a picture or anything else for an exercise that you seem to be the one who made up. And at least we have a name. It's like, I hate it when people make up exercises and they give them stupid names like an Australia push-up or whatever. It's like, I don't, no one knows what that is, right? If they're not standardized lifts that everyone knows, or at least the strength world knows, don't expect anyone to know that, because they're like, I hear that, it's like Australian chin-ups and renegade rows, and people come up with these names and it's like, I've never heard of these lifts, guys, and I'm used to using bizarre, crazy stuff. Like, don't assume that people know what the hell you're talking about, because we probably don't. And there's probably some of the best strength coaches in the world don't even know what you're talking about. Describe or take a picture of what you're talking about. Now this, I'm assuming you've got some sort of device you're laying on the ground to do a decline floor press. That's all I can assume. I don't recommend you lay on anything on a floor press. Like, how sturdy is the device you're using? I get the concept, look, you want a bit of a decline, well, why don't you just do an arch? Right? You could just create an arch and just do a normal arched floor press. If you're just trying to change your torso angle and get it to touch. There's no need for you to lay a device on the ground, which is what it sounds like you're doing. I made a video on that not long ago saying I don't recommend that people lay on something to change the range of motion on the floor press. Right? Don't lay on something. Right? Build your back up. Don't lay on a device because it may not be stable. It may cause problems. It might hurt your back as you get strong on something like it's pressing against something not designed for that purpose. So I don't know. You've created some sort of wedge or something that you're laying on. Well, again, I think that's a good way to get hurt because you're going to put a bizarre arch or maybe a sharp point on your back. So no, I wouldn't recommend this. Doesn't sound like a good idea at all. Just do a floor press. Like, what's wrong with a normal floor press? You don't have access to a bench. Why do you need to put some device under there that could hurt you? And what I would say, if you feel that you need that steeper angle, just create an arch. Just create an arch. It'll be fine. There's no need to come up with new stuff to where we slip a device under on something like that that could end up hurting you. And you might be really weak, so you're getting away with it when you're starting out. But as you get stronger, whatever you're slipping under there could create more and more instability problems, pressure points, things on your back that you don't need. There are plenty of people who use a floor press as a primary exercise who are big, jacked, and strong and uninjured who do it all the time. It's fine the way it is. Come up with variations, but you don't need to lay on something. All right, next question. Is there any need for a pull-down movement for maximum hypertrophy of the back, or everything can be worked with rows only? What do you mean? You can't work the entire back with a pull-down, right? I mean, realistically, if you think about it, which movement is going to work more overall back? Some sort of pull-down movement or a row? A row is, right? Why? Well, first of all, you're not working any erector, right? If you're pulling down, or again, doing a pull-up or a chin-up, you're not working your erectors at all. So your entire lower half of your back is being completely neglected. If you are also doing a vertical pull like that, your upper back gets neglected a lot too. That actually works. That actually works less trap, less rear delt, right? All parts of the back. It works less of those things than any form of rowing motion does. What does it hit better? It hits lats better. It hits biceps better too, potentially. But we're working more lat, potentially more bicep, right? Depending on grip and everything. Well, if your goal is to just get really big lats and you don't care about the rest of your back, then by all means, those are hard to beat. But we come over to the question of, can you maximally develop your lats also using rows? Of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to? Is it a primary mover? Yeah. There are plenty of guys with monstrously big backs and maximum back development who do only rows and they don't do any sort of pull down or pull up. And again, I'm someone who has historically said those are great exercises. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying they're not good exercises. But they don't give you maximum back development. In fact, it neglects at least 50% of your back muscles considerably. To focus on lats. So here's what I would say with that. If your lats are particularly lagging, pull-down movements could be of great value, right? Well, who's that likely to be the case for? I don't know. People who've done tons of deadlifting and face pulls and maybe only a small amount of rowing might actually be somewhat disproportionate. They might have overdeveloped erectors and traps and rear delts and be seriously lacking in the lats, in which case, okay, some pull-ups or pull downs in this case, could be of great value to you there. Sure, I get it. But for overall back development, rowing is going to be better. It's going to be better. Could you do both? Sure. I tend to put a heavier focus on my clients these days on rowing, though. Why? Because I find that most of my guys who focus too much on pull-ups, they don't have enough upper back development. And it doesn't carry over as well. Lack of upper back development can make some of their lifts more difficult. It can give them strength deficiencies overall. So if you made me pick between the two, I'm going to put a heavier focus on rowing. But could a person do both? Sure, there's nothing wrong with doing both. If you want to do pull-ups and chin-ups and rows and deadlifting and face pulls, sure, as long as it's programmed correctly, knock yourself out. But other than a little bit more focus on the lats themselves and the biceps, the pull down movements and pull ups don't bring anything else to the table, right? Over correctly performed rows. And if you do enough training volume, you'll still build really, really big lats off rows. So it's a matter of programming overall. So you're asking, are they necessary for maximum back development? No. No. Pull downs are not required for it. They can be a valuable tool, but they're not required. I think rowing is required for maximum back development. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.